The Misspellbook. Gallando was a typical wizard. He spent his days reading spellbooks, making potions, and waving his wand at unlucky toads. He found a heavy book of potions and spells at the wizard library that looked like it might make for an interesting afternoon. He opened the musty old book on his table. He found a recipe for an elixir of youth, and read the first step. Add a frog hair and beetle to the cauldron. He scratched his beard. A frog hair? Frogs don't have hair. Where am I going to find such a thing? He muttered to himself. Gallando consulted all his wizard friends. Not one of them knew where he might find a hairy frog, but one of them knew a spell that put hair on frogs. So, after all the trouble of magically giving a frog a beautiful mane of hair, Gallando finished the potion. He took an eager swig of the elixir. Then, suddenly, his beard started growing longer and grayer and grayer. He looked in the mirror with alarm. I'm not younger, I'm older, he cried to his reflection. He turned to the book and reread the instructions. He slapped his hand on his forehead when it occurred to him what must have happened. Oh, of course, the writer forgot to add the commas. These were supposed to be 3 separate ingredients. Whoever wrote this forgot to put commas between the items in the list. Letting out a frustrated sigh, Gallando peered over at the fabulous frog and its youthful golden hair. It gave a ribbit. Ribbit. How could I have known that's what it meant? There should be commas after each item in a list of 2 or more things, he exclaimed. The frog blinked at him. I bet you don't even know what a comma is, Gallando grumbled. How should the recipe have been written? Well then, no more potions, Gallando announced. He flipped through the book until he found a spell that looked simple enough. This spell will turn a pile of stones into ice cream hats and chocolate cupcakes, it read. Ha! Ice cream hats? There's no such thing. The commas are missing again. It should say, this spell will turn a pile of stones into ice cream, hats, and chocolate cupcakes. Gallando mumbled to himself. He gathered a pile of stones on his table and waved his wand, chanting the spell from the book. When Gallando gave a final flick of his wand, the result was not what he expected. There were chocolate cupcakes, to be sure, but instead of ice cream and hats, on top of the table were hats made of ice cream, already melting messily on the table. Gallando threw his hands up in the air. The author actually meant ice cream hats? I thought he left out the commas like he did before. What am I going to do with all of this dessert? I don't even like ice cream. What did Gallando think the recipe was supposed to be? He glared as the frog's long tongue shot out to take a lick of the ice cream hat. I've had it with this book, he said with disgust. He turned to the front cover and found the author, Phibius Shuffleby. Beneath his name was a line that said, This extraordinary spellbook is dedicated to my parents, the mayor of Hexville and Brutus. The mayor of Hexville is the author's mother? Something must be done. I will not stand for this lack of punctuation. Wizards could get hurt, Gallando declared. He didn't know where to find Phibius Shuffleby, but he knew where the office of the mayor of Hexville was. He snapped the book shut and left at once. When he arrived at the mayor's office, he burst right through the door. The mayor looked up from the papers on her desk with surprise. Your son, Phibius Shuffleby, is a danger to wizards everywhere, Gallando boomed. His spellbook never uses serial commas. Do you see this beard? He said, waving it in the air like a flag. It's 7 inches longer now. 7! The mayor shook her head, baffled. I don't know what you're talking about. Phibius Shuffleby isn't my son. I don't have any children. But, Gallando began. He opened the book cover again and reread the sentence. The mayor calmly reached over and added a comma with her quill and fixed the punctuation to fix the writing so that it didn't look like the mayor and Brutus were his parents. I believe Brutus is his cat, the mayor offered. What did the text look like after the mayor fixed it? Ugh! Gallando howled, his face turning red under his beard. He stormed out of the office. You forgot your book, the mayor called after him. Good riddance, he called back. When he made it back home, he cleaned up the ice cream mess and calmed down. After all, it was only a comma. He opened up a brand new cookbook he'd been given as a gift and decided to make the stew recipe his friend had recommended. He followed the directions carefully, even when it said stir in mustard, greens, acorn, squash, kidney, beans, and celery. Gallando sat down and sipped a spoonful of soup. He immediately spat it back out. That's the foulest thing I've ever tasted, he choked, reaching for the book. He reread the recipe and saw that it was listed under 4-ingredient recipes. Something was wrong. Maybe some commas were missing? He looked at the cover. It read, Easy and Extraordinary Eats, a cookbook by Phibius Shuffleby. What is the correct version of this recipe? With a defeated sigh, he took a bite of one of the chocolate cupcakes from his earlier accident. They were quite delicious. At the beginning of this story, we learned about Gallando's hobbies. What did he like to do? The end.